What's up, everyone? Welcome to the second episode of the Product Mastercast. In this episode, I speak to Nicolaas du Plessis about a skills matrix concept about being a product manager. So there's 4 quadrants, and we unpack it in detail in this conversation. I hope you enjoy it. If you do, please hit that like button and also subscribe to the channel for future episodes that are coming up. Your support is highly appreciated. I hope you enjoy the conversation.
Cool. So firstly, I want to thank you for coming on. I know we've tried a few times to get this right, but I really appreciate you taking your time and joining me today to discuss, product and product management and all of that. So to firstly, just let the people know who you are, some of your background and your experience in the industry.
Sure. So Nicolaas du Plessis, for short, you just call me Nick. I've been in the engineering IT industry for about 12 years now. Started off as a developer and kind of worked my way into product over the few years. It's given me a lot of gray hairs, but it makes me look more advanced. I would assume. Wise is another word. I'm currently in the e-com industry. There's quite a lot of cool stuff happening there, specifically in South Africa at the moment. It's really seen a lot of uptake in it. So exciting times in that space.
I think the first question that came to me was just like, I know, again, COVID is always that topic that everyone's talking about right now. And you said there's a lot of exciting things happening. How could you just hear of everyone sort of pivoting into going online. How do you see product management in that whole space and how the movement is realizing how much we can actually do online these days?
I think, and this is just personal opinion from what I've experienced, just generally, not necessarily with COVID. I think COVID just springboarded us into adopting some things a lot faster. Previously experienced, I've worked with teams across the world, with development teams sitting in the US, in Europe, in India, even up in Africa, Egypt side. And, working in this space at this point in time isn't very new to me personally, but as I mentioned, I think with COVID forcing local companies to become more remote and also facilitate remote work with teams, just kind of pushed us into a space. Look, it's definitely got its pros and cons. I think specifically for us in product, we have a lot of conversations. I think our conversation matrix, within the teams or within your product teams surpasses 8 to 9 conversation lines at one time. And that is a little bit more tricky to facilitate electronically because you're not almost conversing, with each other in a room. You're kind of conversing electronically, and you do lose some of the facial expressions and your body language and understanding how a person reacts to a certain statement. I think in that space, it's made it slightly harder. But now,
how would you see Scrum Masters facilitating or helping you in your facilitation of your teams in this new way of working that we're experiencing at the moment?
That is a very unique question to ask, because I think agile adoption in companies has been quite unique to the specific need of the company. Some companies actually don't have a Scrum Master role as part of the agile team, whereas in previous companies I worked, we did. It's also, it's very interesting because I haven't actually had a Scrum Master in my team for a few years now, interestingly enough.
But that's exactly it, Nick, because my whole reason I got to the name of Product Master was the fact that I'd never done one or the other role. I always found myself doing both, and I was like, well, let's put it together. It's a Product Master. Luckily enough, recently I have been able to do so. And I'm seeing the benefits and the separation. So I'm kind of seeing the benefits to it, but I think you're right. It does depend on the company and stuff. So how do you navigate then? How have you navigated sort of having to be the facilitator plus do the product stuff?
I think, again, from my experience, there's these different factors within a product cycle. And we've got the actual product life cycle, you've got your project life cycle, and then, your system development life cycle. And I've kind of split these up into different quadrants of what I call product management in my own personal opinion. And you're going to have the business part, the data parts, the design parts, and then the engineering parts. And how I, over the years, has facilitated, kind of wearing hats in all these four quadrants, is dependent on the maturity of where the product's at. So if you start with your ideation or your problem solving, you are focusing a lot more on the business portion of the business quadrant. Now that's where your requirements really sit, and your problem solving, your hypothesis, and kind of then you wear your business strategist hat, working closely with stakeholders and, looking at the views and concerns that they might have, and ultimately the problem that you're trying to solve. And as it matures into the data stage where, now actually go into the operational part of it. So operationally, we've got this problem. Operationally, we need to solve it, and we need to do research on data.
How quickly?
Yeah.
Sorry, it's just like, how quickly do you normally see that transition into the data space? So I love it, and I really want to unpack this because I think this could be the crux. Is looking at the different quadrants. I'm very interested in data, and I believe in that's how we make a lot of our decisions. So how do you see, where does the data really become in? You're talking about the life cycle. So when does data become important?
So if you can imagine four quadrants, next to one another and below each other, and it almost has a spiral. In the infancy of a product, your spiral is quite small. So when you do ideation and problem solving, hypothesis and problem statements, you kind of spiral between all four of the quadrants quite rapidly. So you go into business solution strategy, ROI, into data analysis, BI, gathering, qualitative, quantitative data, making design decisions, talking closely with the design stakeholders, the UI, UX guys, some design thinking, their processes, and then spiraling back into engineering to make sure that technically what you're trying to do is going to be feasible. And as the project matures and, you get more buy-in and the path becomes a bit clearer over the time, your percentage time spent in each quadrant might slow down, and you'll be in data and you'll do quantitative data early enough, and then move into qualitative, which requires you to be more focused, more involved, work closely with the BI and machine learning teams to actually gather these things and create the reports. And when you have that, you kind of slowly move through into design again, where you now articulate your findings to the design teams, and they have their reportings and heat maps and all sorts of fun stuff, that's funky things that design guys are able to do nowadays. And then ultimately it feeds constantly as a spiral, and as the life cycle continues and the project matures, ultimately then you get to the place where development is actually started on an MVP, and you start busy with the project life cycle, if you want to call it that, where you actually have deliverables that's come into play. I think that's the quadrant where you wear the Scrum Master / product owner / manager hat, because now you're managing sideways, downwards, and upwards. As a Scrum Master, you're helping and facilitate the team and teams. As a product owner, you might have different teams that you have to consult with. And then as a product manager, you're feeding back into stakeholders and putting new stuff on roadmaps and constantly having to, facilitate that. And that's why I say it is a spiral, because it feels like that at times. Sometimes you look around and you're like, where am I?
That's a Tuesday for us, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, I think it's so great. And when I first met you and you sort of brought up this concept, it really hit home for me, because I think that's exactly it. We every day we kind of figure out, like, this part of the quadrant we're having to deal with today, there's a DevOps issue. So now you're in that engineering space. So let's say, there's somebody that has heard about being a product manager, and you say it's very, business orientated, being able to drive a product into market and stuff like that. So let's just say that person is strong at business. Now, your other 4 quadrants that you've mentioned, do you need to have all 4, or are there 1 or 2 that complement each other? And can you build? How would you build it out if you weren't strong in all 4, if you didn't have experience in all
4? In that space, I think people is very important. As an individual, it's very hard to drive change. You and I are good examples. We've probably in our lifetime try to push agile, and the benefits of it, only when it started being adopted by more and more people, that the value of it become more relevant. And I think, saying that it's very similar to the space in product management. It is a very new role within our industry. Product development in engineering has always been there, but now we've kind of moved it into the software space, which has kind of made it slightly a bit more interesting. And also, the skill set of a product manager is being defined daily.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to come to an answer to your question, I think, and why I say people is important, in the event where you might not have relevant exposure to these different quadrants, it's always very helpful to have subject matter experts that are aligned with the products that you're wanting to deliver, and it's up to you to communicate the value of what you're trying to achieve. And I think once you align people to the ultimate outcome that you're trying to achieve, the output won't be that difficult for them to do, because it might be something that they connect personally with, it might be something that they're personally excited about, or you are just a good salesman and you can sell it well. And I think as you work closely with these subject matter experts, they learn a bit more about the business savvy side, you learn a bit more about, the data aspects of.
So like you're learning by doing.
Yeah, and also you're kind of teaching one another, because opinions are always strong when you have experts in the room, and the debates become very interesting. But it does provide different perspectives around, the room about how can we best use, machine learning to mine data. So from a BI perspective, we can get better results. And if you can focus that, laser focus that on a specific product that you are pushing, for the next product, it might be a lot easier, even for that team. And I think the same for the design and the engineering space. It also creates a nice cohesion within the different teams within these quadrants, which is ultimately required to deliver in those spaces.
Yeah, I think that the product space in general is still sort of finding its feet. A work colleague said to me today even that in Silicon Valley, she's part of a Slack channel in Silicon Valley, and people there are still figuring out product and all of that. So yeah, there's still a lot of room for learning. So if we had to look back at the quadrant, your design things, I think that hypothesis kind of element to it, like where we look at our hypothesis and how do we start unraveling them. Can you give us some insights according to a quadrant to the importance and how the role it plays for a product manager specifically?
No, for sure. So I kind of think about it as, and I'll just kind of put it in sequence, is the business quadrant is almost a requirement quadrant. The data quadrant is the operational quadrant. Like, how would we do this? How would this work? What would it actually achieve? The design quadrant is the behavioral quadrant. So we identified an opportunity, we've looked at it operationally, it looked feasible, but now we need to identify behavior, and if that behavior will actually be something that will be, taken up by customers or internal or external customers. And I always say, and this comes from my engineering experience, that a service is also a customer of another service. So
that's an interesting
in that space, because it's not necessarily the behavior of the end user, it's also the behavior of one service talking to another service, or a monolithic system talking to a database, or an API. There's many behaviors that you need to take into account when you do design. It's sometimes just seen as the front end, which is extremely important, but just as important is the actual behavioral designs of the systems that you are put into place before you actually move it into the engineering.
So
and
if you are in a early phased project, what let's look at those 4 quadrants, and just in general the makeup of a development team, or a Scrum team, whatever you want to call them. Who would you have around your table? So what sort of skill sets or like roles would you want as a product manager? You like, we have this problem we want to start solving. Early stage, who do you have around the table?
That's a very interesting question, and why I say that it's because it's very situational to the type of problem that you are going to be solving. If it is you can actually even imagine identifying problems within each quadrant. If it is a problem that is from business, you will definitely need to have strong individuals in the business space, but equally strong individuals in the engineering and design space. But the hypothesis will most likely be driven by the individual within the business space, and I could, as a product manager, also just be a supporting role in that space. Where there's lacking, if you're sitting right in the middle and there's this one-liner open-ended requirements that we receive on a weekly basis as product managers, I would say identifying, strong subject matter experts in the fields, in both quadrants. For me specifically, people that I've built a relationship with, that understands that it's a macro architecture, where you need to make very quick decisions, but also be able to be strong enough to stand with the decisions and back each other up. I think that is, for me, more important at times than actually having the relevant experience, because experience you can gain if you understand that. But if you falter on opinions and you have disagreements, then you're actually losing. So I think a strong team that you can trust and that's open to opinions, that for me is who I would like to add.
No, I love that. I think I've worked in teams where there was lacking trust, or they didn't feel like they had a voice in the team. So I guess that's where the topic of the Scrum Master or a good product manager needs to come in and play, to break down that, so that those conversations and that ideation and whatever it is can take place freely, and people can work with that. So
I think what I would like to add to our discussion is almost at the core of all the quadrants and that spiral is always people. You can't deliver anything physical or software related without the people. And I think for me, just kind of moving a little bit more broader on this topic, and it's the topic that's everywhere, in the talks which we listen to, is that the core of everything is the people, and the trust relationship is what actually keeps these quadrants together. If there's no trust within the different teams that you work in, you might work with business development in business, and they're very far separated from the design teams. There's never going to be very good cohesion. And I think as product managers, that is also a very, very important soft skill that is sometimes overlooked. And that is people management and emotional management and
interpersonal skills. Yeah,
all those lovely
having
things.
a high EQ. It's massive.
I actually did a course not so long ago for body language and reading body language, and how it assisted me when I was specifically presenting workshops. And you could easily pick up when somebody was disengaging at a time where they actually needed to be very involved to give their opinion, because what happens if that individual kind of disconnects, the best solution might not be put on the table. Or a perspective that was required to maybe address it from a different angle was lost. So for me, I think what keeps all these quadrants together is just the people and the relationships. And as a product manager, that's what makes our work very interesting.
Do you think the people that are above us, that are, let's say the project sponsors, let's say, or the outside client, let's say, do you think they understand what we're doing in the background with that orchestra again? Because that's it again, is the people are putting that orchestra together and making sure everyone's kind of coming to the party. Do you think there's a gap there?
To use your analogy, I'm going to expand on it a little bit slightly more. As a sponsor or adding capital into it. If I was that individual going to a concert, I just want to listen to beautiful music. I want to pay for my ticket. I want to sit in my comfortable chair. And I want to sit back and I want to see the amazing stuff that is happening in front of me. And I will appreciate it more because I know the effort that goes into, the practicing and the composer needing to align everybody. And I think that is important, is to keep the personal connection with the stakeholder, the sponsor, the investor, alive, because that's their dream, is they want to listen to a beautiful piece of music, and to keep them connected to that dream and keep them excited about that dream, or that beautiful piece of music or this beautiful product that they're wanting to launch. It's their baby, and they've given it to us, and to mature it.
We have to babysit it.
Yes,
teach it all the right things.
Yeah, and I think as everybody, and as human beings, we've always had tribes, and some of the people in the tribe were hunters, some were builders, some fish water. Everybody had a specific place in that, and you put that all together. You don't know how hard the guy had to run past. A lot
and I don't think that any part of that team, while that person's fetching the water, someone's busy hunting, let's say, and I don't think that there's any part of that team that is not as important as the other one,
No,
because they all
never.
need to be working, and that's why I love what you're saying about the people are in the middle, because it's making sure that everyone's kind of dancing together is how you will be able to deliver that end goal, or look after that baby as such. We're using a lot of analogies today.
No, and I think it's good to use analogies that's commonly, digested by the listeners or anybody that wants to kind of be in the space. Because at the end of the day, when everybody comes together to, watch the play, listen to the orchestra, eat supper together, everybody is there and everybody's having a good time. Everybody is appreciative of one another and the effort they've put in. And if somebody didn't get the water, that day because of whatever happened. Because it's a group and a community, it's not frowned upon. It's almost like an accepted, like, you know what, tomorrow failure is good. You know, you're turning losses into lessons as you go along. And the reason why I'm kind of saying this and to pull it back together again is that if you can keep people motivated and excited about what you're trying to deliver, it doesn't matter what rank they are. Leadership is kind of doesn't equate to rank. If you can lead this team, including your stakeholders, as part of that team and not see them as this separate entity or this person that a scary person that's going to come in and say some things or derail anything. You know, bring them into that.
Pour water all over everyone.
Yeah, make them part of it and keep the motivation alive. And what's cool about that is when you are sometimes demotivated, these individuals keep that motivation flowing and, you know, pushing everything forward. Even the sponsors at times. So you know, for me, I think that
you spot on. I think of an incident that happened this week for me. I held a workshop, and for me, I was like, oh, workshop didn't work that well. It was a bit of an ideation strategy workshop. We got everyone, like you said, I got the stakeholders, got everyone together and stuff. And, you know, we spent quite a bit of time together. And at the end, I was like, oh, that didn't quite hit the mark. You know, we didn't actually finish that workshop with the outcome that we were looking for. And that was earlier this week. And then today I had my team telling me no, but that was fine. Like, we learned a hell of a lot during that time, and that's okay. But because they understand the people and how we're all doing this dance together, and it was great to hear that from your team, giving you that kind of like, don't worry, that was still a great workshop and we learned a lot from it. So they all still motivated. It's not like they left and said, okay, I don't want to do this anymore.
No, and I think, you know, having said this and having had this discussion, it actually leads up perfectly to the last quadrant, which is engineering. And another term for us is now, this is the physical build. You know, we've identified the requirements, the operational stuff, our data, the behavioral elements that's needed. Now the rubber needs to hit the road on. So you have to kind of start paying the brass tacks.
And that microscope comes in there, hey, on the engineering side.
And for having facilitating the team and grooming of the relationships and the trust and the communication channels and creating a very transparent space where everybody can engage as required. When it starts getting, you know, physical and anything, you know, exercise, you know, you can dream about exercise until you go and run on a 10K. Then it really gets hard. You know, the first few Ks, that's good. Everybody's excited and motivated. But when you hit, you know, some people might think 10Ks is nothing, but for me, that's a lot. But if you hit, you know, 7Ks, legs are tired. You know, that's when you really rely on, you know, your training and almost the team and the individuals that kind of have stronger you know, skills in certain areas to kind of push you through. And you then was of a support runner, if you want to call it that, motivating and pushing on and forward and kind of trying to remove obstacles. And yeah, that's why I say, you know, when the engineering quadrant hits, it's very important to have those things, and especially from engineering teams' perspectives, they sometimes do feel slightly disconnected.
Let's finish off by talking about what is your favorite part about being a product manager? And if someone says, what makes your job cool? What do you enjoy the most about it?
You know what, if I can sum it up, and I'll leave it as our ending statements, is we all have dreams. And as a product manager, I feel, and I think this is why I've been doing what I'm doing for so long, is that I can enable you to put your dream, your vision, your contribution to society into something feasible. Who knows, the next product that I'm going to deliver or be a part of can change the world as we know it. we've seen many of these type of products that's really changed the way the world works, to be honest.
That's it. Solving problems and realizing dreams. I can't agree with you more.
And being able to contribute something to society that can better society going forward. And, you know, you never know the next project. It might be 2 projects down the line. It might be 5 years down the line. But you can then do something that will improve the lives of my children and my grandchildren going forward. And I think that is what drives me and what makes me keep going forward with this.
Love it. Love it, love it, love it. You know, what I also enjoy about it is that we work on products that are coming up. So we see the future. We know what we're working on. When we talk about machine learning and AI, because we know what's coming, we know what kind of things the machines are starting to learn. So yeah, that's super exciting. I love that side of product. But anyways, I think we can wrap it up there.
Cool, man.
Nick, it's been awesome.
Really awesome.
I think we could probably carry on talking, but yeah, thanks again. And yeah, who knows, maybe we'll see you again as well.
No, for sure. We can kind of have like a to be continued. Yeah, you know, there's so many conversations that you can have about this space. I think in what you're doing and being creating the opportunity with your initiative here, you'll see that it's what's needed. It's what's needed. Product people, we don't really discuss much because we are so focused on our teams, and we actually
and deliverables.
Yes.
100%.
But thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
No, likewise. Have a good evening, and yeah, thanks very much.
Awesome, and see you again hopefully then.
Cheers. Yeah, absolutely. Cheers, Nick.